I was tricked into guarding a grave. 300 yuan for one night. They whispered that the grave was filled with resentment and that someone had to be killed every night to dispel the resentment. Sitting in front of the grave, I sighed. Husband, you've been dead for 800 years. Why can't you let it go? It was an ancestral grave. The middle-aged man who brought me here trembled and his voice was very weak. This is it. 300 yuan for one night. Carrying my school bag. I looked around. There's no bed. Where can I sleep? The man gave a strange smile. You don't need a bed. After he finished speaking, he hurried away. I sat in front of the grave and looked at the black engraving on the tombstone. Andrew. Just 3 characters. There was no description of his life. The black resentment around the grave was thick and unpleasant. I stroked the tombstone and heard whispers coming from not far away. This woman has no parents or relatives. No one will know if she dies. It's her tonight. Let's talk about it tomorrow. Are you sure? Don't let someone come looking for trouble later. If someone comes looking for trouble, just give them some money. Are you still short of money? No. Then that's it. But killing one person every day. It never ends. How can we live like this? If you don't want to find someone to guard the grave, it will be your family members who die every night. Your ancestors did evil. Do you still want to solve it easily? A Taoist priest and the richest man in the capital decided a person's life with just a few words. I touched the tombstone affectionately. Husband. It's been 800 years. Why can't you let it go? Andrew is my husband. I was engaged since I was born. It's not that I've lived for 800 years. It's my grandfather. A yin-yang master. Since I was born. He calculated that my life was fragile and arranged a ghost marriage for me. It was Andrew who was notoriously resentful. According to unofficial history, 100 years ago, the Chen family was also moderately wealthy. But suddenly, the family began to have continuous bad luck and died. The passing Taoist priest said that Andrew had a bad 8 characters, and was a curse to his relatives. The Taoist priest pointed out a clear way: make Andrew have a hard time every day. After torturing him to death, seal his body in an iron coffin. Only then can the Chen family become wealthy day by day and have many descendants. Andrew was tortured for a full 20 years. He died at the age of 23. I felt uncomfortable and slept in front of the grave for one night. Surrounded by the black fog, I slept soundly. The next day, 2 men came up the mountain with black plastic bags. Come quickly. Today it's a woman. It's easy to move. They approached with plastic bags. I opened my eyes and smiled. Good morning. Alive. Help. The 2 men ran down the mountain in a frenzy. I stood up and looked at the human-shaped black fog behind me. It was the long-lasting hatred condensed. I reached out and took the hand of the human-shaped black fog. In just a second, the arm of the black fog visibly fell off and disappeared. When Andrew died, his limbs were cut off and he was made into a human swine. His death was tragic. My grandfather's words echoed in my ears. My eyes were sour. Now the Chen family has become the richest family in the capital. But Andrew has been unable to be reincarnated for 800 years. Andrew, I understand what you mean. I will avenge you. I went down the mountain to buy food. The black fog followed behind. I fed him biscuits and stuffed them into the black fog. Only after 2 crunching sounds did he finish eating. Is it delicious? The black fog nodded. You've never eaten good things before. Now times are different. There are many delicious things. The black fog nodded obediently. I stuffed another biscuit into him. He was trapped in the grave. If I hadn't accidentally found him, and had a ghost marriage, he still wouldn't know how many years he would be trapped. I sighed. The Chen family is now the richest family in the capital. It's not easy to take revenge. The black fog dispersed. In a short time, it formed 3 characters again. Don't take revenge. Don't take revenge? Yes. Why? Don't you hate them? And you still kill one person every night. I didn't kill them. Then who did? The Taoist priest. I gasped. The TV suddenly turned on. After the snowflakes creen, a news item appeared. The female host spoke very quickly. Yesterday, we received news that President Jian of the Goose Group shows signs of waking up. During the 6 months when Jian was in a coma, he still firmly holds the top spot on the Forbes richest list. Jian. Andrew. I was confused. Jian is you? The human-shaped black fog nodded and then shook his head. Then the black fog formed several more characters. Wife, come find me. The black fog swam in the air. Strange and dangerous. I remembered what my grandfather said before he passed away. Andrew had accumulated so much resentment that he had become a ghost and was extremely dangerous. One must never relax one's vigilance against him. My hands and feet were ice-cold, and I felt a vague uneasiness in my heart. I met Jian. His face was extremely pale and his body was thin and very weak. Who are you? Jian was already awake, then looked at me warily. I climbed over the wall and entered the ward. Looking at the black fog beside me, why is he awake? Isn't he your current body? Jian frowned. Cough. What body? The black fog formed several characters, indicating for me to chat with Jian according to the black characters. I turned to look at Jian, seeing his noble temperament and extremely handsome appearance. But there was a black aura between his eyebrows. He didn't have much time left. I asked, do you know Andrew? Jian's coughing suddenly stopped and there was terror in his eyes. He looked around in panic. Is he here? I nodded. What is he doing here? Coming. To kill me? No. I repeated as the black fog said. No. Then I want to use his body. He wants to use your body. I am simply a gold medal translator. Jian couldn't see the black fog and could only listen to me. I was a bit unclear about the relationship between Andrew and Jian. Jian was silent for a long time and suddenly asked me, what is your relationship with Andrew? I answered truthfully, he is my husband. Jian stared at me for a while. His face didn't look good. I can lend my body to him. But you can't do that kind of thing with my body. What kind of thing? Jian didn't answer. He looked at the air beside me and said in a deep voice, Andrew. This is the last time. Jian closed his eyes and the black fog entered his body. When he woke up again, it was Andrew. The originally gloomy eyes instantly curved up. Warm and gentle. My heart missed a beat and I swallowed. Wife. No, darling? Andrew was wearing a hospital gown. He slowly got up and stood in front of me. He took my hand. His fingers were slightly cool. Goosebumps rose on my back. Probably because I hadn't touched a man in 23 years. It made me very uncomfortable. Andrew had a gentle temperament. Gentle and refined like a scholar. I carefully pulled out my hand. We're not very familiar yet. Let's not hold hands for now. But we've been married for 23 years. That still won't do. Andrew frowned slightly and then smiled. I'll listen to my wife. I turned my head and brought the topic back. Andrew, what's the matter between you and Jian? Have you borrowed his body many times? Yes. He is weak. We once reached an agreement. As long as he lends me his body, I will ensure his longevity. It's a good deal. I was puzzled. He seems very afraid of you. Andrew slightly hooked his lips, because he's not very obedient. The words spoken with a smile had a somewhat creepy danger. I was stunned. The enlarged handsome face came close. Wife, what do you think of Jian's appearance? I took a step back. Not bad. Andrew's eyes were deep. My original appearance was even better than his. I always felt that something was not right. Andrew was too full of yin energy. I couldn't figure him out. I was on guard in my heart, and left the hospital with him. Andrew was going to find that Taoist priest. He said, that Taoist priest uses my name to kill one person every night to practice his skills. It's extremely hateful. Yes. I was filled with righteous indignation, and shared his hatred. We walked back to the grave on the mountain. Jian's body was very weak and his face was as pale as paper. I stuffed a biscuit into his mouth. Why don't we take a break? Your body is not in good condition now. Don't die on the way before we reach the mountain. Andrew stopped. With his long eyelashes drooping, he silently ate the biscuit. I didn't know what he was thinking. I was also very uneasy. Yin-Yang masters always have a very accurate premonition of danger. Sure enough, in the next second, I was met with Andrew's icy black pupils. He said coldly, "Darling, I'm sorry." In an instant, a cold blade pierced through my chest. I fell into darkness and felt my energy draining away. In a trance, I saw little Andrew. There wasn't a good piece of flesh on his body. The cracked wounds exposed red flesh. The bloody smell was mixed with the smell of decay. Flies and mice were running around freely in the firewood room. The 7 or 8-year-old child was lying on the ground. I murmured in a low voice, "Andrew." Little Andrew propped himself up on the ground with his hands and slowly raised his head. Looking at that face, I was struck like by lightning. What kind of face was that? His face was covered with unhealed scars. His original appearance couldn't be seen. His eyes were tightly closed and blood and tears continuously flowed down his cheeks. Little Andrew trembled and was terrified. "I can't see anymore. Mom, I can't see anymore. Please, don't hit me." I took a step forward and wanted to hold him in my arms. But little Andrew trembled suddenly and slowly curled up. His thin hands held his legs tightly. "No, don't hit me. I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong," he muttered in a nervous way, seemingly begging for mercy and also seeming to brainwash himself. What was he wrong about? He did nothing wrong. Bang! The firewood room door was opened. A woman in luxurious clothes walked in. There was a bowl of ginseng soup in her hand. The servant following behind her controlled little Andrew and pried open his mouth. The woman poured the ginseng soup into his mouth. 1,000-year-old ginseng soup. "Andrew, mother is good to you. Right? Drink it quickly. You can't die now. Your father has a big business deal in a few days and still needs you to handle it." "I won't drink." Little Andrew struggled in vain. My hand passed through those people with fierce expressions. I couldn't hold the crying Andrew. Andrew had a very miserable life. His whole life flashed quickly before my eyes. The Chen family was insatiably greedy. They continuously abused Andrew and exchanged his misery for so-called luck. He was always on the verge of death and was kept alive by precious medicines. Finally, in the year when he was 23, after planning for a full half a year, during the gap when the servants were changing shifts, he ended his life with a white silk scarf while dragging his emaciated body. Even death had become a luxury. He finally got his wish. But the Chen family didn't even want to leave his whole body. They made him into a human swine and sealed his body in an iron coffin. The Chen family found the old book he had hidden in the corner of the firewood room and sneered. "He still wants to read. What's the use of reading? A damnable life. Still wants to be a scholar. All right. From now on, we will have endless good days. Finally, we don't have to see that ugly and rotten face anymore." They laughed heartily. Some people were also worried, afraid that even the iron coffin couldn't seal Andrew's resentment. They also knew that he had resentment. That iron coffin was sealed 10 layers thick, before being hurriedly buried. I was in tears, looking at Andrew, who had lost his eyesight and was roaring in the black resentment. What's wrong with me wanting to kill them? They deserve to die. All those who use me deserve to die. At this moment, another voice sounded in my ear. He said, "Bogus Lawa. You used him for a ghost marriage to prolong your life. You also deserve to die." When I woke up again, I was holding a knife in my hand. I touched my chest. There was no wound. Bogus Lawa. As you can see, Andrew is full of resentment and kills people like hemp. The Taoist priest whispered and lowered. He stood beside me and pointed at the person lying in the forest. Not knowing if he was alive or dead. That was the head of the Chen family. Chance and Jin. It was he who tricked me into guarding the grave before. I looked at the dagger in my hand in a daze. The Taoist priest said again, "This is my ancestral sharp blade. The soul-devouring dagger. I have spent a lot of effort to save you. As long as you deal with Andrew to repay his kindness. If you can't be ruthless. When he completely breaks through the seal, there will surely be countless casualties. Go and kill him." I glanced at the Taoist priest by my side. I walked towards Andrew, who was lying on the ground, wrapped in black fog and bound by the soul-binding rope. Andrew's pupils were extremely black, hiding gloomy paranoia and intense hatred. He was a resentful ghost, driven by hatred. He had long lost his human nature. I should have known earlier that the gentle and refined appearance like a breeze was something he pretended. Andrew struggled hard, with bulging veins, and said hoarsely with hatred, "You also want to kill me?" I squatted down holding the dagger. "No more calling me wife? A useless woman who uses me to survive. Want to be my wife? You don't deserve it?" After Andrew finished scolding, he cried again, "What did I do wrong in this life? Why do I suffer so much?" Amid Andrew's crying, I cut the soul-binding rope with the dagger. The crying stopped abruptly. Andrew's eyes were pitch black, stunned and confused. I chuckled. "No more crying?" Andrew's jet black eyes were full of confusion. I helped him up. "Have a biscuit. A milky breakfast biscuit." He liked it very much. Andrew had never eaten good things. When he was locked in the firewood room, when he was extremely hungry, he ate rats raw. At that time, he hadn't been completely determined to die. He thought about reading more books and learning more characters. Later, he would participate in the imperial examinations and leave the hellish Chen family. He wanted to be a decent scholar. Andrew was eating biscuits beside me. I twirled the soul-devouring dagger in my hand and curved my eyes towards the Taoist priest. "If you don't leave, I'll kill you." The Taoist priest was already in the appearance of an old man. His white beard trembled. He pointed at me with wide eyes. You are. I stood up. The Taoist priest hurriedly ran down the mountain. I squatted down again and looked at Andrew. "You like eating biscuits. I will buy a lot for you in the future." Andrew's body paused slightly. As soon as I finished speaking, the black fog and resentment around him dissipated a little. He was actually very easy to coax. I looked at the resentment on his body. When the resentment dissipated completely, he could be reincarnated again and forget his past. At that time, I would also. Andrew stopped pretending to be refined and called me wife. I took him down the mountain, and by the way called an ambulance for Chen's and Jin. He wasn't completely dead yet. He could be saved. Andrew was very unhappy and wished he could snatch my phone and step on it. But he didn't do anything either. He silently followed behind me and entered the small single room I rented. He looked around. "You have no money?" I turned back. Andrew shook his head. He had no requirements for his residence. After all, he had slept in the firewood room that was as dirty and messy as hell before. I looked at him and sighed softly. I reasoned with him. "Don't be angry. I'm not trying to stop you from taking revenge. It's just that after all, you will eventually enter reincarnation again. If you get involved with human lives, I'm afraid your next life won't be easy." Andrew stared at me. "I can't live a good life in this life. Why should I care about the next life?" My eyes were sour. I had seen his whole life. From a poor child to a young man who grasped hope. And finally to a young man who hanged himself in despair. There is only one word to describe it: miserable. I sat cross-legged on the ground and took out the tools belonging to a yin-yang master that my grandfather left me. I began to perform a ritual. Chen King Quan died suddenly in 1247 in the southern Song dynasty. He did many evil things in his life and tortured his young son. In his reincarnation, he retained his memory and became a plow ox, working day and night. When he grew old, he was eaten by people. After another cycle, he became a chicken and a pig. After 7 reincarnations in the animal realm, he could atone for his sins. Fang Mingyuan died of illness in 1253 in the Southern Song dynasty. Entered the animal realm and had 8 reincarnations with memory. I closed my eyes and kept spitting out names. Those were all people from the Chen family who had hurt Andrew. None of them had a good end. But there were too many. There were too many people who had hurt him. I couldn't calculate them all. I didn't learn my skills well enough. I spat out a mouthful of old blood. When I coughed, I was extremely tired. With the smell of blood in my mouth, I softly comforted him. Andrew, none of them have a good result. Don't be angry anymore. Andrew sunk his eyes. There's also the Taoist priest. Yes. The Taoist priest who gave advice to the Chen family and caused him pain all his life. Andrew should have had a prosperous life. The Taoist priest coveted his good fate and transferred his fate to himself by evil methods. Not only that, but that Taoist priest also extended his life by taking human lives. He lived for 800 years. I had a headache. As for that Taoist priest, I will deal with him. You don't do anything. Andrew stared at me. Why are you helping me? I wanted to kill you. Want to kill me? I laughed. After all, I am a yin-yang master. How could I not know what Andrew wants to do? He just wants to draw out the yin energy in my body and boost the spiritual energy. When the yin energy is drawn out, it feels like a sharp blade piercing through the chest. Except for the pain at that time. At most it just makes me feel weak. How could it be life-threatening? The Taoist priest treated me like a fool. And Andrew didn't even refute. Of course. Just because he doesn't kill me doesn't mean he won't kill others. All right. All right. Rest first. That Taoist priest probably won't dare to kill people recently. The Taoist priest is already in his twilight years. Without the help of the Chen family, even a primary school student can kick him down. I pulled Andrew to lie down. Have a good sleep. A lot of his resentment has dissipated. Andrew was lying on the bed and still looking at me. If I am reincarnated, you won't be able to live either. Do you want to die? No. But I have lived for so long relying on you. It's a big profit. Andrew silently turned sideways, with his back to me, and said nothing more. I took Andrew to play from morning to night. He liked eating biscuits. I carried biscuits with me and pointed at the bus lane. This is a bus. I'll take you for a ride. While eating biscuits, Andrew followed me. I showed him all the famous buildings in the city. Andrew didn't say a word. It wasn't until we entered the provincial library that there was some emotional fluctuation. He was very excited. Are there all books inside? Yes. There are all kinds of books inside. Can I read them all? Of course you can. Andrew wanted to be a scholar before. When he saw books, his eyes lit up. He read in the library all day. I slept all day. I was at 2 extremes with him. My grandfather said back then that if I liked treating, the yin-yang master's lineage would be cut off. He told me to concentrate on reading. But I didn't like reading. In the end, I could only be a yin-yang master and take orders. And because I didn't have enough reputation and professionalism, I couldn't get orders and could only do part-time jobs. So when Chen Sinjin came to me and asked me to do a part-time job guarding the grave for 300 yuan a night, I agreed without hesitation. Who knew that I could still meet my own husband? Andrew couldn't stop reading. I endured it for 3 days. If it weren't for seeing the black fog and resentment gradually dissipating, I would have left long ago. When Andrew was ejected, I was about to turn off the light and go to sleep. The black fog flew out of Jian's body. Aha! Jian screamed. I woke up in shock. My sleepiness disappeared instantly. Looking at the human-shaped black fog floating by the bed and then at Jian who was hugging the quilt and screaming on the bed. Jian's eyes were red. He glared at me. Andrew. I said. Don't sleep with her using my body. The black fog formed several characters. I didn't. Jian couldn't see. I translated. He said he didn't. Jian stared at me warily, afraid that I would molest him. I was helpless. There is only one bed here. And there are two quilts covering us respectively. What are you afraid of? You. Jian pointed at me, trembling with anger. I awkwardly comforted him. Don't be angry. You are in poor health. What if you accidentally die of anger? I'd rather die of anger. Andrew. You used my body to read books endlessly again. I said I would have a headache. And you. This woman. You actually climbed into my bed. I lost my innocence. I might as well die. My ears were buzzing. I caught the key words. Again? Jian didn't answer my confusion. He turned over and got out of bed, put on slippers and walked towards the door, muttering, I will never lend you my body again. If you want my life, just come and take it. I can't live this kind of life for even one more day. When he reached the door, he pointed at the slippers on his feet. In shock. You actually dared to put such cheap slippers on me. I was confused. No one told me that Jian, President Gu, was actually a ranting monster. Andrew's black fog formed to characters. Sorry. I translated. He said sorry. Jian didn't accept the apology. He slammed the door shut and left angrily. The room was extremely quiet. I asked, what should we do now? The black fog formed words. Sleep. The human-shaped black fog floated onto the bed and lay beside me. The color of the black fog was much lighter. Not as thick as before. At this rate, in less than 3 months, Andrew will be able to be reincarnated again. I was going to take Andrew on a trip. Before we could even leave the door, President Gu, who had left in a hurry last night, came back again. Jian looked at me with an awkward expression. Is Andrew still here? I looked at the human-shaped black fog beside me. Yes. Jian's face was alternately green and white. After struggling for a long time, he said, I'll lend you my body. He glanced at me. If you want to be with this woman, that's fine too. He forced out this sentence through clenched teeth. But must keep it clean and pay attention to hygiene. The black fog formed words. Ask him what he wants. I translated. What do you want? Jian pursed his lips and got to the point. There is something wrong with the company. I can't handle it. Andrew. Help me. I was shocked. He is from your ancestors' generation. If there is a problem with your modern technology company and you ask him, he can't do anything either. Jian sneered. The company was founded by him. Could he have no way? I was shocked again. On the way back to the company, Jian told me about the grievances between him and Andrew. In fact, he originally liked Andrew very much. His family was well off, but he had been weak since childhood and couldn't be cured by medicine. When he was 12, his father found a Taoist priest to set up a magic circle for him. After that, he met Andrew. At first, he could still see Andrew's black fog state. He borrowed my body and read books day and night. It gave me a headache. I didn't like reading in the first place. That's fine. He also founded a company and made me go to work every day. There is so much money in my family. I can live a carefree life without starting a business. Why should I suffer from going to work? I looked at the chattering Jian. He seemed to have found an outlet and kept talking. He had held back the matter of Andrew borrowing his body for many years. My friends all thought I was schizophrenic. Sometimes a president. Sometimes a loser. I can't stand it. I sat close to the black fog and asked, so what? Jian was silent. Then he apologized. So I found a Taoist priest and sealed him up again. Of course. I was also punished. I was in poor health. Without him, I was in a coma for half a year due to illness. No wonder in the hospital. He was afraid that Andrew would kill him. And when Andrew said he was not obedient, it should be that he was not honest in studying and going to work. In a way, Andrew's thinking is extremely old-fashioned and stubborn. I asked Andrew, if you want to read, just read. Why bother founding a company and suffering? The black fog formed words. Now it's a society ruled by law. There are too many people in the Chen family. I can't kill them all. I want to use business warfare to deal with the Chen family. Awesome. I gave a thumbs up. Business warfare was a method I hadn't thought of. The Chen family has been wealthy for 100 years, and has many descendants. To say that they are all innocent is also true that they are descendants of the Chen family, and have lived a good life as rich people. To say that they are at fault, it's not a crime worthy of death. So a business war is the way to go. Take away the wealth of the Chen family. Unfortunately, Jian didn't cooperate. Jian and Andrew reached an agreement. Andrew manages the company and uses Jian's body and property to wage business warfare against the Chen family. The two cooperate happily. I am responsible for logistical work. From time to time, I feed biscuits to the busy and dizzy Andrew. He doesn't like anything else but loves basic milky breakfast biscuits. Sometimes when Andrew eats and his lips touch my fingers, his cheeks turn red. He is very cute. As for the so-called business warfare, it's just Andrew's one-sided crushing. In the past, he had already made the Gu family's company very large. Dealing with the Chen family is easy. Andrew's resentment has dissipated a lot again. The Chen family knelt in front of the office door and cried, "President Gu, we don't know where our family has offended you. Please tell us clearly. We will change everything." Andrew stood in the office and looked at the Chen family kneeling at the door. It's too late. It can't be changed. The Chen family made a commotion, crying and shouting. They were dragged away by security guards. They have inherited undeserved wealth for too long. That wealth is all bloody. It's Andrew's blood. Andrew didn't push them to a dead end. He said, "I won't make things difficult for the Chen family anymore. In the future, if they accumulate wealth again by themselves, that's their ability." I touched his cheek. Such a good person was actually forced into a resentful ghost alive. After Andrew was done, it was my turn to be busy. I called the police and reported that the old Taoist priest had no ID card. I also reported that Chen Xinjin of the Chen family, and the Taoist priest had jointly killed many people. In a technological society, the police have a tight net. The old Taoist priest has nowhere to escape. He was arrested and put in prison, waiting for trial. As for Chen Xinjin, he entered the police station as soon as he left the hospital. After dealing with the two of them, I took and drew up the mountain. He returned his body to Jian. The resentment was so faint that it was almost transparent. Jian struggled to climb up the mountain, panting with exhaustion. The excavation team dug for 3 days and 3 nights. Jian complained more than once, "Why is it buried so deep?" I pretended to be relaxed, because they were afraid of his revenge. If it's buried deep, he can't climb out. When the iron coffin was dug out, it was already extremely fragile. Back then, it was sealed 10 layers thick. After 800 years, it was still vulnerable. I pried open the iron coffin. Inside was rotten mud and only a wisp of black hair remained. Jian's face was pale. "This is Andrew?" "Yes." I trembled as I picked out the hair from the mud and put it in a plastic bag, keeping it close to my heart. Andrew's resentment is about to dissipate. Those who hurt him in the past have all received retribution. After 800 years of suffering, he can finally be reborn. Jian and I hugged each other and cried. We were both reluctant to part with him. Jian was thinking that his good friend was leaving. As for me, I was thinking that after finally meeting someone who made my heart flutter, we couldn't be together all the time. I thought a lot. If the Chen family hadn't abused Andrew, and let him read freely and grow up healthily, he would have been a handsome and noble young man. Gentle and refined. Naturally, he would never have met me. Jian was the first to calm down. "Forget it. Don't cry. Brother Andrew. You go first. We will come later." I paused and then remembered. As soon as Andrew left, Jian and I, who had survived only by relying on him, would both die. Fortunately, Jian could think it through and face death calmly. Andrew borrowed Jian's body again. He wrote a sentence with a brush. It was in standard regular script and traditional Chinese characters. Wife. See you in the future. Before I could react, the brush in Andrew's hand fell to the ground. Pa? What's going on? Did Andrew leave? Jian chattered noisily. I folded the note on the table and held it in my palm, suppressing a sob. I said, yes. He left. Jian was silent. I picked up the brush and lowered my head to shed some tears. After several deep breaths, I barely came to terms with it. Prepare for the funeral. We don't have much time left either, I said. Jian was silent. He went into the room and changed into a set of pajamas. He lay on the bed with his hands on his lower abdomen, in a peaceful pose. I didn't understand his train of thought. What are you doing? Jian was calm, waiting to die. I miss Andrew. But people have reincarnation. We will meet again. I bought a lot of milky breakfast biscuits and placed them in front of Andrew's new tombstone. This is a good place. Andrew will surely have everything go smoothly in his next life. Jian and I didn't wait for death for a long time. So we got together and waited slowly. Jian bought 2 grave sites, and even had them edged with gold. He sighed. There is still so much money left unused. Alas. It's a pity. I said proudly. Fortunately, I've used up all my money. Jian looked at me twice with hesitation. There was a bit of pity for the poor in his eyes. I pretended not to see it. We waited for the end a month later. Life drained away from our bodies. I saw Andrew, dressed in white robes, with a handsome fair face and a gentle and refined temperament like a scholar. He was also holding an iron chain. I looked at Andrew's face in shock. You, I stammered. The surroundings were pitch black. It should be that we had reached the underworld. Andrew had come to pick me up. Really handsome. I mean it. I didn't expect Andrew to be so handsome. The Chen family is really extremely sinful. Wife. Andrew walked towards me. The iron chain in his hand dragged and made jingling sounds. I was puzzled. What are you doing with an iron chain? Andrew smiled slightly. I am now working in the underworld. This iron chain is used to capture souls. You didn't enter reincarnation? No. The King of Hell said that I am a good seedling. I capture souls quickly and accurately. I nodded in a daze. Can I do your job? I had a good thought in my mind. If I could also work in the underworld, I could really fall in love with Andrew. Fall in love. But Andrew shook his head. If you want to work here, it will be 100 years later. I asked the King of Hell for longevity for you and Jian. The screams woke me up. I got up from the sofa and saw Jian shouting and running out of the room. He was extremely shocked. I didn't die. I really didn't die. I met his gaze. I didn't die either. He couldn't believe it. Is it Andrew? He found me. He said he borrowed longevity for me. I can live to be 100 years old. I nodded. Oh my God. Jian roared to the sky. Very excited. But extreme joy turned to sorrow. In the next second, he fainted. I twitched the corner of my mouth. I helped him up and threw him onto the bed and called the family doctor. When Jian woke up again, he stared at the ceiling blankly. Didn't I die at 100 years old? Why did I faint? I was speechless. Brother. You are in poor health. Don't make trouble. Otherwise, be careful of fainting. If you faint for more than 70 years and die in a coma at 100 years old, that's also living to be 100 years old. Jian was obedient. But I wasn't. I want to fall in love with Andrew. Andrew's soul-capturing work is not busy. He often comes to see me. I carry milky breakfast biscuits with me and am always ready to feed him. I heard that there are also exams in the underworld. Those who do well in the exams can be highly regarded by the King of Hell. For someone like Andrew who loves reading, a ghost, it's simply a great thing. He has learned a lot of underworld knowledge. I want to deepen our relationship. Seeing him reading, I was embarrassed to interrupt. Finally, I couldn't hold back anymore. I was uncomfortable in my heart, and didn't hold back in my words. Every time you come to see me, you have to read. Don't come anymore. Andrew immediately put away the book and lowered his head obediently. Wife. I'm sorry. Wife. My heart was as sweet as honey. But it didn't show on my face. Andrew pulled me into his arms. After I finished the exam, I won't read anymore. After this small exam, I can have a position for family members to accompany me. When your longevity is exhausted, we can be together forever. I was extremely pleased by his coaxing. Then you have to do well in the exam. Andrew nodded. I thanked my grandfather again in my heart for finding me a good husband. As for Gian, without Andrew's help, he had a very difficult time. He couldn't manage the company and always wanted to ask Andrew for help. I sternly refused. He is capturing souls during the day and still has to deal with your company's affairs at night. Gian took it for granted. The company is his. Of course, he should manage it. But he doesn't want it now. Gian glared at me angrily. It's all your fault. What's my fault? If it weren't for you pestering him at night, could he not come to me? I sneered coldly. This is a gentle place for me. What's yours? A nightmare for workers? Gian left angrily. But he didn't forget to give a wedding gift. Our new wedding with Andrew. Epilogue. My and Andrew's wedding was held 70 years later. When my longevity was exhausted, I entered the underworld. From an old person's appearance, I became a vibrant twin smiting again. Andrew had made many friends in the underworld. The wedding was lively. Gian also went to reincarnation after watching our wedding. He was originally afraid that he wouldn't see our wedding after death. So he gave the wedding gift early. Now his wish is fulfilled. Andrew was dressed in wedding clothes. He was very tall and had a handsome appearance. He held my hand. Wife. I have been waiting for this day for a long time. I snuggled into his arms. So have I. In the 300th year of Andrew's tenure in the underworld, we had a child. Yes, a child. Underworld employees can have children. But the children are not recorded in the Book of Life and Death. When they grow up, they also work in the underworld. The little one is very much like Andrew. Since childhood, he has been a refined gentleman. Every word is polite. My teeth ached with soreness. When our child, Chen Yum-ing, grew up, he bowed and saluted me and Andrew. Father, mother, son wants to go to the human world. Please give your permission, he said gently. I nodded. Andrew waved his hand. Go. As soon as our son left, I gritted my teeth and pinched Andrew hard on the small of his back. He winced and dodged sideways. I was so angry that I kicked him. I had said long ago, don't teach the child according to your era. Now it's good. He wants to go to the human world. With the way he talks, he will probably be caught and regarded as mentally ill. Andrew pursed his lips and smiled. I don't think so. It's excellent for a man to maintain gentlemanly etiquette. What nonsense. I looked at the figure that was very much like Andrew and gradually disappeared. Forget it. At worst, I'll redeem him from the mental hospital later. At this time, I didn't know yet. My refined son will one day ride a motorcycle in the human world. With long hair fluttering, shouting long live freedom. I hugged Andrew. This life is long and monotonous and a bit boring. In a few days, let's go to reincarnation. Andrew and I have a very deep fate. Even if we are reincarnated again, it will be a result of a peaceful life and being together forever. Andrew held my hand tightly. He said yes. I closed my eyes and rested. In my dream, the tragic appearance of little Andrew when he was young appeared. The scars on little Andrew's face gradually disappeared, revealing a delicate little face. He held a book and walked towards me. His blushing cheeks had the shyness of a young boy. Boguslawa. Tomorrow is Qixi Festival. Shall we go release lanterns together?